The Quran is a healing for every disease. The Quran is a healing for society's diseases. The Quran is a healing for our emotional diseases. The Quran is a healing for our relationship diseases. And if we look into the Quran, we find these healings. One example, often what makes us broken inside, what becomes a barrier to our healing, is that we go through things that hurt us, that we go through hardship, that we go through loss, that we go through trials, that we go through tragedy. This is a natural part of this life. There is not a single human being who will live this life without going through some sort of hardship, without going through some sort of trial, without going through some sort of loss. It is the nature of dunya. But the Quran gives us a healing for these things. The Quran gives us a healing for loss. The Quran gives us a healing for hardship. You know why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, عَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. It may be that you hate something and it is good for you. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the Quran, has given us a completely different lens to see the world. Now all of a sudden, those things that we thought were bad for us, we realize that in fact, they could be good for us. Even if it means losing something we love. We all will go through loss of something that we love. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us this in the Quran. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. Allah tells us, Allah warns us, Allah prepares us. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ. We will indeed test you. Indeed. بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ. With something of fear. See, the fear that we experience in this life is only a glimpse of true fear. It's only a glimpse. It is just shay'un min al-khawf. It is just a piece, a bit of fear. Because real fear is when we are, wa'a'udhu billah, real fear is when a person is standing about to enter hellfire. That is real fear. Real fear is standing on the day of judgment bare. We in this life experience just a glimpse of what fear, of what real fear is like. Yes, we feel afraid in this life. Allah shows us just a little bit, a little glimpse of what fear is like. Real fear. And so He tells us, you will surely be tested. You know, if someone is warning you of something, clearly warning you, then how then can you be surprised when it happens? Right? Allah is warning us. So how then can we be surprised when it happens? And yet we get surprised, don't we? We get surprised that we were tested. We get surprised that we're afraid. We get surprised that something was taken from us. We get surprised. But if we read the Quran and reflect on the Quran and then absorb the Quranic paradigm into our hearts, it changes the way we view the world. Now all of a sudden we aren't surprised. We aren't surprised. In fact, we expect it. Why do we expect it? Because Allah said so. Allah said, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ. Our Creator has warned us, has prepared us, that we will surely be tested of something of fear and something of hunger. Again, the hunger of this life is only a glimpse of real hunger. When a person is in hellfire and has nothing to drink except boiling water, what we experience in this life is nothing compared to that. And we ask Allah for protection. But Allah gives us a glimpse. Shay'un min al-khawfi wal-ju'a. So something of fear and hunger. And then comes the loss. And then Allah gives us a glimpse, gives us something. He tests us with something of loss. Do we lose things in this life? Anyone ever lost something? We are always losing something. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-Asr, wal-Asr, He swears by time that innal insana lafi khusr, that indeed mankind is in a state of loss. We're always losing something. We lose time, we lose health, we lose beauty, we lose intellect. Every minute that we live, every day that we live is closer to what? To losing those things. I am coming closer to losing my health, my youth, my intellect, everything. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. But there is a group of people who are saved from loss. Capital L. Now we lose things of dunya. That's a fact. But the ultimate loss, capital L, is not for the believers. Because the believers, they don't lose. You know why? Whatever they lose of dunya is saved for them. Whatever they lose of dunya is saved for them with Allah, if they are believers. And so Allah tells us that there's one group of people who are saved from this loss. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Except for those who believe. We have to believe. We have to believe to be able to hold on to anything from this life. If we do not believe, then we will lose everything. Everything. You will not hold on to your money. Your money will not come to you in your grave, except in one situation. In fact, two situations. When that money is used for the sake of Allah, when that money is used for a sadaqah, for a charity that continues to benefit others, it actually comes back in your grave. You want your money to come with you to your grave? Use it for Allah. Use it, give it. Because the money that you hold on to, you lose. Have you ever heard of anyone taking their money with them in their grave? Even if they tried, it would disintegrate, wouldn't it? It's paper. But there's only one way to hold on to that money. Give it for Allah. Give it for Allah and it will come back to you in your grave. As the Prophet ﷺ said, that there are three things that continue to benefit us in our grave. And one of them is the sadaqah jariyah, the sadaqah, the charity that continues to benefit people even after we die. You want to hold on to your money? You give it. And so there is one group of people who are saved from loss. The first characteristic is that they are those who believe. If you want to hold on to what you have to believe. But belief alone is not enough. Allah tells us the second characteristic in Surah Al-Asr. الَّذِينَ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. And they do righteous deeds. It is not enough for you to say that my iman is in my heart, but it doesn't show up in my actions. It's not enough. Because anytime something is in your heart, it necessarily shows in your action. When you love someone, it shows in your actions. And when you don't care about someone, it shows in your actions. When you are sincere, when you are humble, when you are miserly inside, it shows in your actions. And yet we try to say that we have Iman in our hearts and we love Allah in our hearts, but it doesn't show in our actions. That is a contradiction. When you really have love in your heart, it must show in your actions. Can I prove it to you? A mother's love for her child. We all agree that mothers love their children, correct? This is just one of those things. Believer, non-believer, atheist, agnostic, mothers love their children. So can a mother say, yes, I love my child, but I left my child on the doorstep to starve? But I love my child. I'm overflowing with love for my child, but I neglected my child on the doorstep. That is a contradiction of love. You see the love of a mother in her actions because she'll stay up all night with her child if she needs to. She will lose sleep. She will give up everything for her child. You see that love in action. And yet we say, I love Allah. I love Rasulullah. I have Iman. I have love in my heart, but it doesn't show in our actions. How can I say I love Allah, but I am not interested in pleasing Him? When was the last time you loved someone and were not interested in pleasing them? When you really love someone, you go out of your way to please them, don't you? Look at a person who's in love, right? Object of love says jump. Person in love says how high, right? When you're in love with someone, you do whatever makes them happy. That's why love is such a powerful force. It is such a powerful force. And that is exactly why we have to be so careful what we love most. Because whatever you and I love most becomes our master. It owns us. It owns us. We will give anything for the thing that we love most. That's why it's so dangerous to love money most. That's why it's so dangerous to love status most. That's why it's so dangerous to love the creation more than the Creator. Because that object of love, whatever we love most, becomes our master. And so we cannot say we are spiritual but not religious. To say I am spiritual but not religious is as if I am saying I love God. I am in love with God, but I have no interest in following His rules. I love God and I feel high with that love, but I have no interest in doing what pleases Him. What is in my heart must show in action. So Allah tells us that the ones who are saved from loss are those who believe and do righteous deeds. It is not enough to say the hijab is in my heart, that I'm praying in my heart, that the Iman is in my heart, but it is not showing in my actions. It is not enough to say that I am so God-fearing, but I treat my family badly. But I treat the people around me rudely. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that when the heart is rectified, the entire body becomes rectified. And He said, خَيْرُكُمْ خَيْرٌ لِأَهْلِهِ. The best of you are those who are best to their families. And yet we think that we can be religious by dressing religious, by having a big beard and a big abaya, but it doesn't show in our treatment of others. That's a contradiction. It's a contradiction of the pure state of the heart. When the heart is clean, it shows in our actions. It shows in how we treat people. Look at the example of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, the best of you are best to your families, and I am best to my family. He was the best of us, and so he was best to his family. So if you want to know, how is my heart? How is my iman? How is this process going of my spirituality? You need to look at your actions. You need to look at how you treat people, especially those nearest to you, especially your own family. Why? Because this is what Rasulullah ﷺ said. He said, this is the gauge. You want to know the gauge of who are the best of you? Those who are best to their families. Not those who can be the best in public. Not those who can be the best only at the masjid, and when they come home, they're monsters. They give their best to the people, in public. They give their best to the people at work, to the people at the masjid. But as soon as they step home, that's when they give their worst. It's supposed to be that you give your best to your family. So this belief needs to be applied in action. And so Allah tells us, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. The second part of this equation, how you and I can save ourselves from complete loss, is not only believing and then putting that belief into action, but we need to become a force of good for our families and our communities and our society. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ. That they enjoin one another to truth. We have to be a voice of truth. We have to be a people who stand up for justice. We don't just practice in our homes. We have to be a force in society for good and for truth. That's what tawasaw bil-haqqi means. It is not enough to just believe and do good deeds in your home and that's it. And you don't take a stand for your society and for your community and for your families and for other people. That's part of this process. So you need to be a force for good in society. Enjoin one another to truth. Care about people. Care about your society. And then finally, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. And they enjoin one another to patience. See, the thing is about this path, the path of faith and good deeds and enjoining one another to truth necessitates patience. It requires a huge amount of patience. You will not be able to be successful in the first three of these criteria, right? Belief, good work, good actions, and enjoining truth, and calling one another to truth. You will not be able to be successful in those three unless you have patience. A lot of patience. And enjoin patience, that we have to support each other in patience. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us this worldview. This is a healing, because when we read and internalize the Quran, we start to see our lives completely differently. We start to see our hardships completely differently. And we go back and we see that Allah has already prepared us, that Allah has already warned us that we will be tested, that we will be tested in something of fear and hunger and loss. What will we lose? شيء وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ, and loss of wealth, souls, and fruits of our labor, fruits of our toil. When you go through your life and you lose some money, the one who does not have the Islamic paradigm, does not have the Quranic paradigm, will say, why me? This isn't fair. The one who does not have this healing from the Quran will be shocked that they lost money and will be angry and may be absolutely devastated to the extent that they don't want to live anymore. There are people who end their lives because they lost money. This is an extreme. But this happened because there wasn't that understanding that Allah has already prepared us for. That there will be loss of wealth and souls. When we lose someone that we love, without this understanding that Allah has already prepared us, that Allah has already warned us, we might react with anger and devastation. And finally, loss in the fruits of our toil. Have you ever put in so much effort into something and gotten no results? Have you ever put in so much effort into something and it just didn't work out the way you wanted? I think it's happened to all of us. And so Allah is also telling us that you will be tested in that. You will be tested in the result not being the way you want. That the fruits of your toil, the fruits of your labor, the results, in other words, will be lost. This is a test. And then finally, Allah gives us some really great news. He says, وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ, and give glad tidings to those who have patience. Now, have you ever seen someone going through like a massive hardship and you go up to them and say, congratulations, brother, congratulations, sister? We don't usually do that, right? Doesn't usually work that way. But that's almost what the ayah is saying, isn't it? Allah is saying, وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. He is saying that this is going to happen. You're going to be tested. You're going to go through hardship. And then after saying that, He says, give glad tidings to the patient ones. So He is saying that you go through these things, and He is saying glad tidings to you. We would never think this way without this Quranic healing. We would never see a hardship or a loss in wealth and people and results as something good. And yet Allah says, give glad tidings to the patient ones. So you see how it completely changes the way we understand the world and then the way we understand our lives. Then Allah tells us, who are these patient ones that He is congratulating? الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّ لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّ إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. You want to be among those people who Allah is giving glad tidings to? Then do this. When a hardship comes to you in whatever form, you respond with Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Indeed, we belong to Allah, and to Allah is our return.